Hi, my name is Steven and welcome back to my channel. And today I'm going to be talking to you about knowing yourself and how to do it. So knowing yourself makes you confident in decisions and makes you independent of opinions from other people. For me, I've spent a lot of time getting to know myself over the last couple of years and what things I ultimately stand for. Although I'm not finished with my journey, the progress that I've made has given me greater confidence in my decisions, awareness of goals in my life, and better relationships for those who are around me. So today I'm going to be talking to you about my self-discovery journey, why is it important to know yourself, and tips and suggestions on knowing yourself from my experiences. And here we go. So my journey to self-discovery started when I was in my late teens. I was directionless. I didn't know what I really wanted for myself. Lots of things that I was doing, it was because of influence from other people, and I didn't really have a core belief in myself or what I wanted to accomplish in my life. This is very similar to the typical way we grow up, in that we don't really know who we are in our teens, late teens, and then even in our early 20s. And then in my early 20s, I made a lot of questionable decisions and I tried to fit in with the people that ultimately weren't really good for me. And during this time, I really didn't have a lot of strong goals or what I wanted to do in my life. So I ended up wasting a lot of time just going through the motions and not really accomplishing anything big or grand. I did a lot of different things, but ultimately that experience didn't teach me who I am as a person or what I really stood for. This became a problem for me because when I was in my 20s, I really wanted to accomplish something big. And not knowing myself, it was a huge detriment to my progress. I knew I wanted to accomplish something big in my life, but I was doing a whole bunch of things that weren't really getting to my ultimate goal. Which, that goal, I didn't even know what it was at the time. So I really started on this journey of knowing myself because I wanted to figure out why I did things the way that I did and what was the motivation behind doing it. Because a lot of things that I was doing, I really didn't have an overall purpose. So I slowly began the journey of knowing myself. So why do you need to know yourself? Let's go through some of the reasons why knowing yourself is so important to your life. And without really knowing yourself, it's hard to achieve grand or large goals. So number one, lost in life or lack of direction. When you don't know who you are, you really can't make grand plans for yourself because you can be swayed by the next biggest thing or the next new thing, and it doesn't really align with your grand vision because you need to know yourself in order to figure out what are the things that I really like and what are things that are really going to help me achieve my grand goal. A great example of this is when you're in high school and you're trying to pick a major for college. Like most people, we don't really fully know what we want to do when we're 17 or 18. And it takes a lot of time for us to really figure out what we're really good at, what we want to do in our lives. So a lot of people either pick a major and then change their mind later, or they go undecided. And if you're really lucky, you can pick a major that you really are interested in, and then you'll actually do that job once you graduate. So if you really figure out what you want to do in high school, then you're really at a significant advantage than those other people who didn't really know what they want to do in high school. And that really all comes down to knowing yourself and what you're good at and what kind of your vision is for the next couple of years. In life, we don't really have a lot of decision gates like high school to college transitions. A lot of our long-term goals is something that we have to do and cultivate ourselves. So it's more important that we know who we are as a person to have those long-term goals so that we don't end up being directionless in our critical late 20s or 30s in our lives. Number two, people can take advantage of you. So if we don't know who we are, it is easier to get swindled by other people. For a simple example, if you aren't good at gambling or know your limits to gambling, then you're at a higher risk of losing all your money. So for example, setting a limit on the amount of money you lose before you stop gambling is a crucial part of knowing ourselves and limiting our losses. If you're up a certain amount and then quit while you're ahead, it's a sign of knowing how good you are at gambling. It comes down to knowing who you are and setting limits and boundaries for yourself. And people can also take advantage of you when you are unsure of something, and they can capitalize on your doubt by taking certain advantage of you. And although it is critical to try new experiences and go outside of your comfort zone, in many cases, it's so much easier when you know yourself and the limits you're willing to go or not go to. Number three, lack of confidence in decisions. As we mature, we get more confident in our decisions. It's the sum total of all of our experiences that makes us assured of the outcome. So knowing yourself gives you the ability to understand your limits and gives you an ability to gauge your decisions better. So in my early 20s, I couldn't make a solid decision by myself. I had to defer to other people. And this was because I didn't know myself and I didn't feel confident in trusting my abilities and my experiences. It was because I didn't know who I was and what I stood for. So I was always swayed by the next person or someone who had a differing opinion. And this feeling of always being swayed by other people wasn't really good. Some of these decisions led me down difficult paths where if I just stayed confident in myself and my own decisions, I wouldn't have gone down those paths. So number 4, better relationships with people. So knowing yourself creates better relationships with people. This is one of the most important reasons to find yourself. It's the ability to create strong relationships with other people, especially those you want to create more intimate relationships with. It is very important that you trust your partner. And if you don't know yourself, then how do you know if you can trust yourself? Where this boils down to is that if you know yourself and you give the other person in the relationship a complete idea of who you are, then they will have a stronger trust in you because you gave them everything that you are as a person. There isn't a hiding behind a facade. You're not trying to be someone you're not. And so if you have that wishy-washiness or non-committal beliefs, then it's going to be harder for that person to really fall in love with you or be a strong friend. Part of the reason why people connect with each other is through mutual things. And if you have really strong feelings about certain things, then you amplify that effect of the relationship. You don't want to be in a situation where you're weeks or months down the line, and then you show the other person who you really are, and then having them reevaluate your friendship or your romantic relationship. And then 5, being happier. Happiness comes from a lot of different sources, and one of them is making confident decisions. It gives you a sense of assuredness. It gives you a sense that you know what you're doing. That can derive a lot of satisfaction and in turn generate happiness. Your mind is also much more at peace because you don't have to question yourself. You don't have to keep asking, was this the right thing to do? Should I have done it? You know the answer. It is a certainty. When you better know yourself, your emotions are true. You don't have to hide behind a facade. As someone who took almost a decade to try to figure out who I was, I know that I'm much happier as a result of knowing who I am. And this has given me confidence, and this has given me emotional stability that all the decisions I'm making, I know to be true and in tune with what I believe in. I'm not perfect. I'm still not perfect, but I know that by knowing myself better, I'm on the path to becoming a better self. And it's really given me the freedom to be my most authentic self, and I give the best version of myself to those who are around me. So here are the tips that helped me to know myself better. So number 1, be honest with yourself. Trust yourself and your inner voice. Ask yourself questions and be very inquisitive about the answers. So for example, ask yourself when you do something and you're not really sure why you do it, ask yourself, why did you do this? What did I have to gain from it? How does this affect other people? How does this affect my relationship? How does this affect my coworkers? Questions like these really help focus the mind and target why you do the things that you do. And when you're answering these questions, don't self-filter. Listen to the answers honestly. The key is to figure out your true motives for doing something. You might not like the answer, but if it's the real answer, it will be uncomfortable to hear, or it will be unexpected. It is never the answer that you think it might be. And once you understand the motives behind why you do the things you do, this is a big step in knowing yourself. And another tip is to not judge yourself for the answer. The answer is what it is. In many cases, it's the genuine and unexpected answers that really gets to the heart of the matter. So number 2, find what you're good at or not good at. So really this is basically more of a skill set check. What are you good at and what are you not good at? A lot of people think that they're good at something when they're really not good at something. Many people don't really have a clear understanding of what they're good at and what they're not good at. And so it's really hard for them to get better at something or even ask for help in certain topics. That kind of situation doesn't lend itself to knowing yourself better. Knowing yourself better means that you have an understanding of the clear skills that you are good at or not good at. And this really gets you in the mindset of figuring out what's your strengths and weaknesses. And once you have that, then you can start to work on how do I improve those things that you're weak at, or focus on my strengths only and just ignore the weaknesses because they don't matter. So do this several times in all kinds of arenas. personal, relationship, sports, and other things that you really want to find out what you're good at or not good at. So number 3, knowing your boundaries. So once you know what you're good at or not good at, assess the limits and boundaries for those things. For example, you're good at swimming, but are you good at swimming in the ocean? And then if you're good at driving, but are you good at driving in the snow? So things like that, where you're assessing what you're good at and then assessing a boundary or limit to what you're capable of. This gives you a good idea of what limit you're willing to go before you stop. This is critical in knowing yourself because this will give you a boundary or a guideline to not doing things that are above your capabilities or put you in a very uncomfortable situation where you don't really know how to get out of. The real benefit of this exercise is that once you go through it, you will know what to do when you're confronted by this problem. For example, if you are good at driving but you're not good at driving in the snow, you will know to stop when you're driving through a lot of snow, or you will ask someone else to drive, or you will not even be in the situation where you're driving through snow. Knowing your boundaries also gives you a sense of empowerment because now you can set clear boundaries to other people, so when they try to push or break your boundaries, you can give them a hard no, or you can tell them that you're making the situation uncomfortable and you don't want to be a part of it. So I'll put a link down in the description below to my previous video on how risky are you. And in this video, I go through how to actually assess your strengths and weaknesses and then put limits and where your boundaries are using a simple green, yellow, and red technique. So number 4, ask feedback from other people. So do this once you've gone through the other exercises. So this is really to assess what you wrote down and then compare that from what other people say you are. This will give you the difference between how others see you and what you see yourself. And what it really means is that if the difference is very small, then you have accurately gauged who you are. And if that gap is really large, then maybe you need to go back and assess your strengths and weaknesses. Asking friends or other people is very critical in knowing yourself because this is what you put out into the world and this is what people see from you. Because there's many times in our lives that we have immense blind spots and we just can't give an unbiased opinion of ourselves. And once you get that feedback from other people, assess whether what you're doing is aligning with your internal motivation. So for example, if you think yourself to be a charitable and honest person, but people keep giving you the feedback of you being distrustful, then really analyze what that means. And then you might need to go back and reevaluate knowing yourself. Number 5, listen carefully. This one tip underpins everything else. Listen to yourself and to other people very carefully and without thinking or judgment. There is a tendency to be heard rather than to be listened to. And so listening becomes a key skill in understanding who you are as a person and knowing yourself the best. Because at the end of the day, knowing yourself is all about listening to what your internal motivations are and what you put out into the world. And that means as unfiltered and listening to the honest truth coming at you. It is very hard because sometimes you don't really want to listen to the criticisms or faults that you might have about yourself. I certainly had a difficult time really listening to what I was putting out into the world. I myself didn't want to hear that I've let someone down or I'm bad at something or that I really need to change something about myself. But ultimately listening to it and then processing it and then eventually making steps to correct those things is at the heart of growing as a person. Because at the end of the day, when we learn about ourselves, we have to process that information. And knowing yourself is really processing that information and making decisions based upon that. Using that information and figuring out whether or not it's correct or it's false. So those are my tips on how to get to know yourself better. These were things that I had to learn to do before I got to know myself better. I really wish when I was younger I had someone that mentored me or I had a video like this to watch to learn how to get to know myself better. Throughout the years, I had to find each of these pieces individually and then stitch them all together and then finally figure out the process of it all. And all this hard work has paid back in many dividends because now it's given me the confidence to chart my life and be confident in the decisions I'm making towards my future. It reduces the chances of me going off my path and making a decision that isn't aligned with my life's purpose. And I have noticed that because I'm on my life's purpose, I've been able to generate a lot of positivity and hopefulness in the future. And that's made me a happier person as a result. The journey has definitely not been an easy process, but in the end, it's definitely worth it. So thank you for watching. Let me know down in the comment below on what you would like to know about yourself and how that would improve your life. And as always, be sure to like, subscribe, comment, share with your friends, hit that notification bell, and I'll see you next time.